Hi, today we're going to talk about how to position a pantograph so that it goes onto your quilt efficiently and that you can not have any noticeable gaps when you're lining it up as you move through the process. So I picked an easy pantograph for us to use today, and notice that there are dark lines and faint lines. The dark lines are the ones that you're going to be following to sew with. The faint lines are actually used more for placement than for sewing. So the first thing you need to do after you've loaded your quilt top on is figure out where your start and stop for your pantograph is. In this case, I always like to line up my pantograph so that a little bit of it is out into the batting area. So I don't want to just stop at the edge of the quilt. So in this case, I've got the line here, and then you sort of guesstimate where you might want that to end. Move the head so that your laser is off your quilt edge, and use one of these blue sticks. To show you where you're going to stop at. I'm going to start this. I don't think, do I need to tell them? The first thing you need to do in this next step is find out what the closest point to you is with the long arm, and make sure that your needle is on your quilt. So I'm going to step around to the front and see where we need to reposition it. And this isn't too bad. So I'm going to let the top roller out so that the back of the hopper foot is where the fabric meets the batting. Everything's locked in place now, and that's about how much bounce you should have to your sandwich. I positioned it so that the start of my pattern is here. Tie it off. Bring up your bobbin thread. Tie it off and ready to roll.
Cathy is standing to one side of the machine so that it's easy for her to see the pantograph and the laser, and is driving the machine with a loose grip on one handle. It's very awkward to stand at the back of the machine and hold both handles. So we did have a thread break, so now we might as well have a little lesson on how we recover from that.
Try to get your thread straightened out, back into all of the little guides.
Cut the goober off.
Pick up the bobbin thread, so come back somewhere in your pattern. And it's still one continuous bobbin thread, so you're going to want to cut it. And one side will pull, that's the side towards the bobbin, the other is still attached, so give yourself enough room that you can bury your tails and start anew. Tie off again. Hopefully this will stay put. Now we're back in business. Oops, am I going the wrong direction though? I've come to the end of the first pass, and I need to go back and backfill up towards the top of the quilt. So I'm not going to need to reposition it just yet, but what I do need is for the head to stay in place. So we found these little dressmaker weights that we tuck behind the long arm to keep the head from drifting at certain levels on the when the table's raised up off the ground. The area that we need to fill in is here, these blank spots on the quilt. And so on the pantograph, there is a lighter shaded part of the pattern that lets us know where we need to fill in at. And I'm going to do that next. So this is the area here that I'm going to be filling in that corresponds with the empty spots that were on the face of the quilt. And as you finish one segment, just travel to the next area that you need to fill in. In order to roll the quilt and have even spacing between our rows, we need to match up the highest point that we've already stitched out with the corresponding spot on the pantograph. And in order to roll the quilt there, we make a mark at this highest point over here using a friction pen or whatever you have. You can use a pencil because it's generally going to be out in the batting area. So now I know when I release the tension on the two bars here, I can roll and I don't have to be standing over it to see that this is going to match up with this point. Take your clips off, release your locks. When you can see, it might be just a tad too far, that this now all lines up, and we are going to be evenly spaced when we start our next row. Again, now we've advanced the quilt on the frame, and I've back at my starting point. I'm going to go ahead and tie off, pick up, tie off. And we're off. Feels really funny on this one. say something while I'm here? Okay. You might have noticed that while filming from the back, that I don't have my pantograph resting on the blue tape line. Are you taping? And I find that it's easier to make sure that I don't have any interference with the red snappers and this dead bar if my pantograph is a little bit above that line. So I just simply use our weights to give me a space between the blue tape line and where I actually place my pantograph for use.
As with so many things, long arming, there's a half a dozen different ways to do it. You do the way that gives you the most success. The most important thing is that you get your paper pantograph placed squarely on the table. So here we can see that because of the way Cathy repositioned to do the next repeat of the pantograph, the spacing is very uniform across the top of the quilt. Nothing has crossed over, and there's no gaps showing a striping.